Spark something uncommon this holiday with just the right gift from Uncommon Goods. I talked about this last year and I'm so excited to talk about it again, but Uncommon Goods is my absolute favorite place to do holiday shopping. They scour the globe for original, handmade, absolutely remarkable things, and it shows. Uncommon Goods is always my go-to place, and it makes it so much less stressful because I can get things for everyone on my list all in one spot. I've been eyeing their Create Your Own Real View Maker that I have in mind for someone I won't quite reveal. I'm also obsessed with their customized items with everything from song wall art to cookies that will definitely make it on my holiday list this year. When you shop at Uncommon Goods, you're supporting artists and small independent businesses. To get 15% off your next gift, go to uncommongoods.com/dateable. That's uncommongoods.com/dateable for 15% off. Don't miss out on this limited time offer. Uncommon Goods, we're all out of the ordinary.
You know what I don't miss at all? That horrendous week right before my period when I feel like crawling out of my skin, and my skin is full of zits, mind you. Yes, PMS hits me hard, but now it's easier to manage with Estro Control by Happy Mammoth. Estro Control contains science-backed herbal extracts that help support hormonal health, especially during PMS. The way it does this is super interesting. The ingredients help support the liver, where our hormones are processed, and oftentimes PMS symptoms are caused by hormonal fluctuations. Estro Control is also made specifically for women who are premenopausal, a time when, PMS can turn into a beast. I know this firsthand. So for a limited time, you can get 15% off on your entire first order at happymammoth.com. Just use the code DATEABLE at checkout. That's happymammoth.com and use the code DATEABLE for 15% off today.
Before we get into this episode, we want to put a disclaimer up top that we will not be discussing anything political, even though this episode is airing on the day of the U.S. elections. We encourage everyone to vote, especially in your local elections as well as national, as it's not only a privilege, but our right and responsibility. And as women, we didn't always have that right. But since this is a dating podcast, we're keeping the topics related, and hopefully this can serve a distraction from the day. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Yue Xu.
And I'm Julie Krafchick.
We're active daters turned dating insiders.
Here to dive into everything modern dating and relationships.
Welcome to Dateable. Hello, friends.
Welcome back to another episode of Dateable.
And welcome back to you, Julie.
Thank you.
Big epic trip to Italy.
I feel like it is now a couple weeks later, but, we, first of all, recovering, seeing the light of day again. I think the first week back, it was a complete slog with time zones and jet lag.
It's funny you say a couple weeks. I feel like you just got back. It still feels like pretty new.
I know. I feel like it feels like, how when you're like planning a big trip and then it happens and you're like, okay, it's done.
Yeah.
We took probably 500 photos, maybe more.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, well, no one needs to see all of these. We should make an album of 20-ish, 20 to 50 photos max to share with family members and stuff. And we're like, well, the window is narrowing in that no one's going to care about this trip anymore. We got to do it fast. But maybe people still do.
I think people will always care. People love looking at travel photos, especially food. I don't know, for me, food photos. You can look at those all day.
Well, you also just got back from Mexico, too. So we had a lot of travel at Team Dateable over here. Well-needed vacations.
Yes, we did. Wild few weeks. But it's all kind of related to our topic for this episode, compersion, right?
Feeling joy for others.
Yeah. And even if those experiences don't directly benefit you, I definitely get compersive when I look at people's travel photos. Like, how lovely. They get to see the world and taste all this incredible food. Of course, compersion in the context of today's episode is about romantic relationships. But I think it applies to all areas of life.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think this episode will obviously go into the definition in way more detail in the episode, but this is really for anyone that just wants to be a better human, I think, or a partner, friend, and not let jealousy and competition with others get in the way. It's about experiencing joy for others the way that kind of removes some of the selfishness that exists in dating.
And if you're interested in exploring consensual non-monogamy, this is kind of a great entry point into how you can draw those boundaries and also expand your heart to having more than one person in your love life.
Our guest today, Dr. Marie Thouin, she's going to talk about this in depth because she wrote a whole book about compersion. And this really does start with consensual non-monogamous relationships. That's where the subject is broached because, you know, your partners are having relationships with other people. So, you know, it's probably not going to be great for all parties involved if you're miserable the whole time while that's happening and jealous. And, you know, in theory, of course, if you are someone that's in the more consensual non-monogamous, or do we not use the term ethical non-monogamous anymore? I feel like I don't see that as often, but you know, in that CNM, ENM space, then of course, like one of those things, like in theory, you're like, oh yeah, I won't be jealous, but sometimes in practice it happens. So I think her research is really interesting and enlightening for people in these types of relationships. But of course, we bring it to all types of relationships, including monogamous ones.
This is a favorite topic of mine at parties because it is so polarizing. I love you using this word compersion. I'm like, have y'all heard of compersion? And I'll explain what it is. And the party's always divided into one spectrum, one side of the spectrum where everyone's like, there's no way. I mean, like I would get so jealous seeing my partner with someone else. If they're happier with someone else, that means we're not in the right relationship. And then on the other end of the spectrum, people are like, well, why should you prevent your partner from being happy and seeking happiness in a multitude of ways? Like you can't always be with your partner and you can't satisfy them in every which way. So why can't you share that space with other people? And your partner could also feel the same way about you. Like they don't need to satisfy all of your needs. So it's if you ever need a party topic, this is it.
So that's who this episode is also for, if you want to seem enlightened and interesting at parties. But, you know, this is a new term, and I think that's why we were also drawn to it. We've known Dr. Marie Thouin for a bit now. She was actually a guest on one of our old sounding board events that we did during the pandemic.
Yeah.
But when she came out with this topic, it is fresh, it is new, it's interesting. And, you know, like I'm someone that is monogamous. I don't have multiple partners, but I think it's easy to feel jealousy like sometimes. And I've definitely felt it even like, I don't know, like when I was really single and all my friends were getting married, like I remember being like, I'm happy for everyone, but I couldn't help but feel like a little bit of jealousy. And this episode is really going to help you like identify like what is that normal quote unquote amount that's human versus like, you know, what's unhealthy and what's actually not making you a better person and be at your best.
I actually also know people who are pissed when their partner's not jealous because they feel like, oh, my partner doesn't love me enough to be jealous. So it really shows the toxic cycles of behavior that we're so used to and how we think love and jealousy are linked in some ways. Yeah, it's interesting to peel back the layers on that.
I think another thing, I don't know if I've necessarily experienced it, but I'm curious if you have, UA, but like when you know, your partner gets a big promotion or something that is going well in their lives that maybe is lacking in your own. Like, have you ever had any instance either with you or a partner or seen it with friends?
I definitely had it with a previous partner from like 15 years ago. He was a struggling producer trying to make ends meet, working way too many hours of the week. And I was living a great life, kind of like freelancing and traveling and eating out and just like having a great life in New York. And he couldn't get past that. He couldn't get past how I worked less than him, but had such a more fulfilling life. And he was so miserable. And even in our breakup email, he's like, I really technically, like if I think about it objectively, I should be happy for you, but I'm struggling to be happy for you. So yes. I've definitely had that. Have you?
I don't know if I've had it blatantly. Like, I don't know if I've ever necessarily felt that way about someone, and it wasn't evident that someone felt that way about me. Maybe they did and I just didn't know, but I can't recall a time. I know I have seen it with some friends and partners in the past.
Yeah, and that's all about looking inward. It's not about your partner per se. It's about what it is that you're not doing for yourself. And now you're projecting that deficiency onto your partner and thinking that, like some people even can equate it to, oh, my partner's taken away my happiness.
It's so fascinating. There's so much to unpack with this topic. I mean, you could even think about it like, even if you weren't upset that they were like, quote unquote, killing it at work, but even just taking time away from your relationship, like that could be a jealousy point or a point of contention.
Yes. But it's just another way of expanding a relationship. And I think even if you don't go fully compersive in a relationship, it is a great lens to look at how can we expand into this area. And I feel like, Julie, for your trip to Italy,
you're like, I'm going to bring it back. Yes.
You were able to expand in your own relationship due to some unforeseen circumstances. Tell us about it.
Well, I did put this up as a quickie. Anyways, like I listened to your quickie and
I did, yes.
So if you haven't yet, it's from a couple weeks ago at this point, but it was right when I got back and it was fresh. And it was actually called The Case for Underthinking, but it does relate to my trip and something that happened that involves a train incident of us kind of missing the last train or almost missing the last train out. It wasn't actually dire, although I thought it was going to be. And I think like with trips, I mean, I was just thinking about it. Like you can obviously get the whole story there, but like with trips, I've never spent that much time nonstop with my partner, even though like I live with my partner, but we're going to work, we're doing our thing.
Yes.
But with a trip too, you're like taken out of your comfort zone and your environment. So, when this train incident happened, like I guess the TLDR is like we were kind of stranded at a destination. There was a train that we were planning on getting in that I was tracking, and then a new one came, but my partner's like, let's get on that one. And then, of course, that one didn't end up stopping where we're supposed to stop. And I might have gotten a little upset. Although, at our check-in, he was like, brought it up as a positive and was like, I really liked how you reacted. And we got through that situation. I was like, really? Because I thought I kind of freaked out a little. But, shit
and
happens.
That's so normal.
And that's not what's on Instagram on trips. Like that part did not make it to my Instagram stories.
Almost missing the train due to my partner. Yeah.
And like torrential rain coming down at the same time and thinking that I was sleeping at that train station.
And then not knowing the language. I mean, I think that's like first and foremost, right? Like,
yeah. Everyone spoke English though, for the most part.
Okay, that's good. All right. So then at least you're able to communicate, but you're in a foreign country. You're unfamiliar with the place.
No one was there. There's no staff at any of these train stations. That's the other piece.
Yup. Exactly. Yeah. So there were two ways you could have gotten out of this. You could have just huffed and puffed and blamed your partner for everything. Or you did exactly what we were just talking about. You expanded outside of your like current emotional bubble and you did something different.
Yeah. It took me a little to get there. But I think that was like a key part of the quickie was like, eventually I was like, it was a mistake, like that is what happens. Like I could have easily made the same mistake, but then when it's someone else, it's easier to go there. It definitely tests you. But I think all in all, we had a great trip. I remember telling my brother about this and he's like, if that's the worst thing that happened, like it wasn't that bad.
That's true.
Like, something's inevitably going to happen. So all in all, we had a great trip. We went to we went to 3 major regions, but we stayed in 5 hotels. So we went to a couple places throughout.
What was your favorite part of the trip?
Ooh, it's so hard because there's so many. I mean, I loved in Florence. We went there first. It's just really walkable, easy to navigate, so much culture and history. So that was really cool. I loved the Tuscan countryside. We're in Pienza area, Montepulciano. I can still not pronounce this stuff fully.
No, that was
but that
good.
area that's the more southern countryside, and it was just so breathtaking there. But I think it was the place we stayed was really cool. It was a farm. They had this like communal dinner at night, and we met all these people like from Korea, Costa Rica, and Canada. Like we had all these like people that we were, chatting with that made it super interesting. We ended up taking a pasta making class the next day with a bunch of them. So it was just a fun experience. And then obviously like the environment you're in is just beautiful. And I mean, Cinque Terre was the other area we went to, and I loved it there too. We kind of got this where the train incident happened. We had like the first day was like an orange alert. So it was like torrential downpours, which like in like a beachy waterfront area is kind of like the worst time for that to happen. But it actually didn't end up really raining that much. And eventually it did at night when we had that, but it kind of like derailed a lot of plans. But then the next day was just beautiful. We did like a pesto making class and, hiking, and it was so nice. So that was really fun.
What do you think is the most surprising part of your trip?
Oh, surprising.
Maybe something happened or something you learned.
I'm trying to think if there was anything I mean, okay. How freaking big the David statue is. I don't know if you've ever seen this. It's freaking massive.
Him, right? Not like his penis is pretty small, but like
it is, but like when you're actually like his balls and like everything is pretty freaking huge. Just because it's massive. There's like a few of them like around the city that are like the smaller replicas. This is like Michelangelo's David in Florence. And then you go to the museum one and it's just freaking massive, like balls in your face.
Yeah, balls in your face. Yeah, they should rename it that.
That's so cultured, right? I sound so cultured right now.
That is literally what everyone says though when they see him. Like everyone's like, oh my God, his balls are in my face. Like no matter how cultured you are, I'm sorry. Everyone's going to have the same reaction.
It's huge. I actually did learn a really interesting tidbit that I think is interesting. Maybe this is, I don't know if it's surprising, but when I was in Cinque Terre, what Cinque Terre is, it's like the 5 lands. So it's these 5 villages connected by trails. It's on the Italian Riviera, just stunning. And we stayed in one called Manarola, and there was another one, Rio Maggiore. And they created this, what's called like Via del Amar, like the path of love. That's what it's called now. And, it's been like more touristy now, but like back in the day when it was first built, the reason for it was to connect the 2 villages so they could find more people to date and like have more partners because like their small village was like limiting.
I mean, and we're still complaining about the apps. People, aren't you glad you don't have to build like a bridge in between your 2 villages just to find someone to date?
You had a hike. You had a hike to find someone to date.
And when it rains, it has to close down, and then you're fucked. Like,
oh my God.
You have no date for that Friday night.
Yeah, I did do something. I didn't tell you this, Yue, though. So we brought the book with us on the trip because my partner wanted to finish reading. This is the early edition one that we got for like PR. But my partner's like, I want to read it before it comes out. He loved it. But he finished on the plane. And I was like, oh, great. I'll take some photos with it. And then at the end, the hotel that we stayed at in Florence, like the last night before we flew out, they had this library in the hotel.
Ooh.
And I left it there.
Hell
I left it there as an omen to spread the love to Italy.
Hell yes.
Get in the hands of someone that will, tell their friends and bring us to Italy.
If we get on a bestseller list in Italy, we'll know exactly how that happened. Great little souvenir to leave behind. Sweet. Okay, what was the best thing you ate though? Come on.
Ooh, so many truffles. Like we got to the point that we were like, we're done with truffles, which is words I never thought I would utter. I don't know. The best thing that we ate, I really liked the pasta we made in the class. That was really good. That was super good. Oh, okay. No, the best thing we ate was definitely the steak, the Florentine steak. It's like rare, which I wasn't sure how I'd feel about it, but it was so good, like melt in your mouth. That being said, we liked it so much that we're like, let's do another steak. like later in the trip. That one was not good.
Oh,
Not good at
no.
all. So we went to the right place the first time when we did more research.
Oh, no. Okay, yeah.
But that first one was good.
My mouth is watering. Just thinking about
it was such a great trip. I am like struggling being back in the US.
I know.
Especially with all the election stuff.
I know.
Good times.
Like, don't you just want to be sitting at a cafe, people watching, drinking your cappuccino?
Yes. Actually, most surprising thing, they don't have iced coffee.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Did you survive?
Not a thing. I barely survived. I had to ask a few times if I could do like iced cappuccino. And like the places that were tourist friendly were like, okay. And some places were like, no.
Oh.
And you're not supposed to walk with it either.
Yeah.
It's a very different vibe.
Did you find a Starbucks, though, who can do your...
I did. And my partner's like, you are not going in there.
No.
Although travel hack that we actually saw on Reddit, I think, we had some leftover money. We actually ended up spending it in the airport because we got very delayed coming back. But we were unsure what to do. And then with exchange rates being so bad. So apparently what people do is they load up a Starbucks card. And then they'll just like use it in wherever they're going after.
Wait, so load it at the
idea.
Airport Starbucks.
Yep.
Oh, that's a great idea. That's a great travel
so you don't pay
hack.
for exchange rates. Yeah.
It's a great travel
Okay.
hack.
I want to hear about your friend's 40th birthday in a nutshell as well. We have all the travel going on.
Oh my
here.
gosh. Yeah. In a nutshell.
Hopefully people are living vicariously with compersion and not just like, ugh.
How compersive can you be? No, it was a great week of celebrations. We celebrated my friend Hai Ching's 40th. Yay, Hai Ching, who listens to Dateable, so I want to give her a shout out. She gathered 10 of her best girlfriends from around the country, and then we flew to Mexico City. We ate, we drank, we laughed, we did all the things. And I think it was like only me and 2 other women who didn't have kids. So everybody else was like, you know,
rager.
Mom on break. So it wasn't so much, they weren't as ragey as my college girlfriends who were like, let's drink.
Okay.
These women were like, let's not drink, but let's sleep as much as we can. And let's take it easy.
Oh,
let's eat as
different
much.
vibe.
Yeah, different vibe. There's a lot of eating, a lot of good tacos that we had. We did lucha libre. We did, you know, like all the things that you do when you go to Mexico City.
Nice.
But then that same week I came back and we celebrated, my man friend and I, we celebrated our 1 year at a tennis resort in it's called La Quinta, and it's by Palm Springs. So we did like a few days, a long weekend there. But we were not prepared for the desert conditions this time of the year. So he had major allergies all weekend. Like he was stuffed up all weekend, and I had a swollen eye. And I was like,
oh, shit.
Welcome to midlife. Desert life. Like we were both just miserable.
Wow. So you guys should not retire in the desert.
Or just be prepared. I don't know how. Like I drink more electrolytes and take all the necessary meds. But yes, we were both like, he's sneezing. I can't open my left eye. It was kind of hilarious looking back on it. It was kind of hilarious.
I can't believe it's been a year. I can't believe it.
Time really flies. But we did break up for like 2 or 3 months. So we like to say it's almost a year.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is that included?
It's almost a year. Like, yes, with that, it's been like 10 months, let's say. But it's still.
Okay. You're not like starting the clock over, but.
Yeah, can't start completely over, but also like I'm not counting those few months either.
Got it. So your 10-month anniversary.
Yeah, it was our 10-month. We really wanted to celebrate the 10-month anniversary. It's a really big deal.
Nice. Well, I'm excited that you guys are giving it a second go and you're celebrating all the stuff. That's fun.
Yes. And then Julie knows this. I mean, amongst all the celebrations, there was something very tragic that happened. A friend that we both know passed away. And I'll probably do a quickie on this, but I've known her and her husband for over 17 years now. I met them in New York in my 20s, and I was in the hospital with her on her last day. And it was probably, of all the celebrations that has happened in the last few weeks, that really trumped everything else in terms of life experiences and life events, where it really just, it's a reminder of how fragile life is, but also gave me a new perspective on relationships too, watching her husband really be with her in her last moments. I mean, like literally last hours of her life puts a whole new spin on how you look at the beginning of a relationship. And just to set the tone, it's like during those last few hours in the hospital with her, they played their wedding video. So having that, I know, just like having that side by side, seeing someone's like their happiest day with like probably their saddest day, it makes you really think about like, what are we wasting time on, right? Stop wasting your time on the things that really stupid things that don't matter when you're on your deathbed. So celebrate as much as you can with your friends and loved ones.
I mean, my heart breaks for that situation. Obviously, like I've met her a couple times and she was so wonderful. I mean, this is like a friend of yours and I met her through you, but I feel like I know her husband even better.
Yeah.
And my heart like completely breaks for him just in this situation. And it's just like, it really does. We talked about this before too with your other friend that went through this with her husband. It just like puts so much in perspective. Like, why are we agonizing on people that are ghosting us and not texting back? And like, also, why are we playing the games to not text back? Like, life is short.
Yeah.
You know? And it's just every time it reframes it for me. And also like why we need to celebrate these moments. Like sometimes I'm like, you know, of course people can make their own calls of how much to spend at a wedding, but sometimes I'm like, is it worth it? Because like you could pay for a down payment or something in a home. But you know, like having that as that memory that they went back to, like there is something that's so special about that. And to have all these memories, and I think this comes full circle with our topic on compersion, right?
Yes.
Of like, you know, celebrating people, like feeling more joy, reframing situations to feel that joy for people in your life. And in turn, that gives you more joy. I think if we're going around being like, oh, another wedding I have to go to versus like, I'm so excited to celebrate Bob and Sarah or Sarah and Samantha, whoever. Like,
Bob, Sarah, and Samantha. Like, it's a throuple.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a throuple. Anyone. But I think that's such a different energy that you're putting out there, right? And I wish like if I could go back in time, like I wish I was able to get out of my own selfishness in some situations and rise above it a bit.
I'll give you a great example of pure compersion. So in the hospital, her best friend told me, because she was not lucid when I got there, but her best friend told me when she said, I love my husband so much, I want him to find love again. That's compersion in its purest form, honestly.
That is definitely compersion.
Yeah. For her to say that, knowing that her days are limited, I love my husband so much, I want him to find love again. Yeah.
That's why I think this topic, you know, I don't want people to be like turned off because it's like consensual non-monogamy and people be like, that's not where I'm at. I really think that this spans so much if we can really see how it does.
Yes.
Okay, well, we're going to go into it with Dr. Marie Thouin because she's a wealth of knowledge on this topic and she will do it justice. Before we do announcements, we've announced a couple weeks ago, we have a bunch of gifts for you, pre-order incentives when you pre-order the book, How to Be Dateable. We have 3 that we're giving away that we calculated to be like $108 value for just the price of the book. And that's audiobook, Kindle, or hardcover. You choose whatever works for you. And the reason why we're doing this, I think we want to like make this clear too. It's like, this is something, first of all, that is standard in the industry. Like we're not the first to do this, but we wanted to go big with our gift because we get that it's like, it's kind of not the most norm to like pre-order a book, especially in the world of like Amazon when you can like get it delivered to you in, you know, a day or two. But why it's so important is because it really supports authors, it supports the book, it helps us get more distribution into bookstores and really get the word out, get on the list, anything to make the world a more dateable place. So if you're aligned with that mission, like it helps us so much to get these pre-orders in. And then in return, we want to give you gifts. You know, we want to give you an incentive to do so because again, we get it that it is more about like the industry, quote unquote, that isn't necessarily the consumer, but we want to make it about the consumer.
And it could be a really fun surprise because we're so many months out that you do this for your future self. And then you get this book when it comes out in January. You'll be like, oh yeah, I forgot. pre-order this book.
And sadly, January is like not that far away.
After I said that, I was like, oh, wait, it's only like 2 months away.
But yeah, it's like perfect for the new year. We know new year to us and all the stuff that comes in. It's going to be a big push in dating. And a lot of times, a lot of us will kind of put dating on pause over the holidays. So it's a good reset in January. So in a way, you can kind of like feel like you're doing some work by pre-ordering now, enjoying the holidays, and then getting back into it in January.
Yes.
And yeah, in the meantime, you can obviously enjoy, we have a modern dating survival guide, dealing with anxiety in dating, which we know is a big topic. It's an audio guide that we created. And then also 25 questions to ask each other in the first months of dating.
So good.
Yeah, I think people ask for this type of stuff all the time because it's like, how do you not do the date review? But also make sure you get the information you need to decide if you should invest in someone. So you can use all this stuff in the meantime. We had one of our community members in Facebook, shout out to Julia, as soon as she claimed her freebie, she came back to the Facebook group and was like, guys, this is legit.
Yeah.
Get on it. So thank you, Julia. We feel they are legit and we're excited to put them out there, but it's always good to hear other people say that are, actively using them.
Yeah, we did not pay her. She's not sponsored.
Not sponsored. So howtobedateable.com. That's where you do it all. You can pre-order on any platform you like. It's up to you. Okay. Other announcements at Dateable Podcast. That's where you find us on Instagram. Leave us a rating and review. It really goes such a long way, especially if you are a fan of the show. That is how you pay it forward. That is how we get better guests. We keep building this community that we're all part of and keep this podcast going. So thank you if you've left a rating and review. 5 stars, please. It really does make the difference. If you have feedback that's not 5 stars, feel free to send it an email. We always appreciate it, but know that even 4 stars does like really impact us. So we hope that you can, be conscious of that and leave us 5 stars.
Yeah, please. If you have any feedback, just email us. Like we are able to really gather that feedback and act on it. But if you leave it in a review, there's nothing we can do because you've already left the review. And it's really sad for us.
And it's not a two-way street. We can't ask you more clarifying questions or what you mean by it. So cool. Okay. Well, before we get into it, this was a good long intro today. We had a lot of catching up to do. Before we get into it, let's hear a message from our sponsors. Want to add some holiday cheer into the bedroom? Spice up your life using the natural power of cannabis with Via. We're obsessed with their best-selling High Love gummy that really intensifies any sexual experience. With its unique blend of pleasure-enhancing cannabinoids, libido-strengthening herbs, and a medium dose of THC, Via's really created one mind-blowing gummy. You can even get their High Love bundle either as an early present for yourself or a loved one. I personally like their THC-free gummies too. Their flow state is my fave because you guessed it, it puts me into that right focus. So whatever your threshold, they have you covered with the highest quality hemp sourced from trusted, independent owned American farms. If you're 21 plus, head to viahemp.com and use the code DATEABLE to receive 15% off. That's VIIA hemp.com and use the code DATEABLE at checkout. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Take your passion and pleasure to a whole new level with High Love from Via Hemp.
With the holiday season right around the corner, you bet I've already started thinking about gifts, especially easy gifting options. And I've discovered that the perfect gift is Osea's limited edition Super Glow Body Set. Now, this includes Osea's best-selling body care products packed in a beautiful box. So it includes a full-size Ondaria algae body oil, their new Ondaria algae body wash, which smells divine, and a travel-size hyaluronic body serum. And let me tell you, this is the ideal set of products for your everything shower. If you know, you know, right? Every product leaves my skin feeling silky, soft, and unbelievably glowy. Give the gift of glow this holiday season with clean, clinically tested skincare from Osea. And right now, we have a special discount just for our listeners. Get 10% off your first order site-wide with the code DATEABLEPODCAST at OseaMalibu.com. That's 10% off your first order at OSEAMalibu.com using the code DATEABLEPODCAST.
Okay, let's hear it from Dr. Marie Thouin, all about compersion.
Marie, welcome to Dateable. Or should I say Dr. Marie Thouin? Did I say that right? We've been trying to pronounce her last name, before we started recording because it's such a great French last name. I'm really trying to get my French in order.
Wow, you do win the medal. I've never had someone say it so perfectly in French. Yes.
That's what we strive for. But we're so happy to have you back. Last time we talked to you, we were just talking about this, 2021. We did a live event with you and you weren't even a doctor then.
Oh my gosh.
So much has changed.
So much.
Published author, doctor, so much going on. And thank you for coming on our show to talk about this topic that maybe a lot of people don't fully understand yet. This concept of compersion. What does it mean? So we're going to dive right in because you are like the go-to person for this concept.
I'm glad you asked. This is my topic. And no wonder people don't know about it because it's not yet in the dictionary. And it's one of my missions through this work to, bring it forward into the Oxford and Merriam-Webster dictionaries. I've emailed the editors a few times and it hasn't happened yet, but I'm very hopeful that with more research, more podcasts, more talk about it, it's going to happen soon. So compersion, to put it really simply, is our wholehearted participation in the joy of others. And the term was coined in polyamorous communities in the 70s, and it's been used mostly in the context of consensual non-monogamy to talk about sharing our partner's happiness when they are experiencing a beautiful, intimate relationship with someone else. So it's a very counterintuitive topic from a monogamous lens, where we would think, oh my gosh, somebody, is getting with my partner? Hell no, I'm not going to feel happy about that. I'm going to feel the opposite. But of course, in consensual non-monogamy, because it is consensual, we're experiencing a lot of emotions, including compersion.
So how did you get interested in this topic in the first place?
Yeah, so I was always kind of uncomfortable with mononormativity. And mononormativity is this social assumption that monogamy is the only valid way to love. I knew that I was able to love more than one person at the same time, and the idea that I had to confine and restrict to only one relationship always felt sort of unnatural, which led me down a curiosity and a research path eventually to find out, what does it take to be successful in non-monogamous relationships and non-traditional settings? And soon the word compersion appeared, and it really piqued my interest because I had the sense that, this is one of the keys that actually help with not only non-monogamy, but also it's a philosophy of love that can really embody what I already feel is important in love, which is to get behind the people we love, their happiness, their success, and their fulfillment and their expansion into their true self. So it clicked as this linchpin of a philosophy of love I could really get behind.
And I think in theory, compersion does make sense. When you love someone, you set them free. When you love someone, you want the best for them. When you love someone, if they're able to find someone else who makes them happier, you want that for them. But in practice, I can imagine that being very challenging because for me, I'm like, wow, jealousy is going to come in, a lot of insecurity. So in your research, what have you found that has worked for people who try to implement compersion?
So there's actually 6 factors that really promote compersion, and their reverse are the things that hinder compersion. So that's really the crux of my book. And they're separated between 3 categories. One is individual factors, one is relational factors, and the other one is social factors. So compersion exists within an ecosystem, not just something that you can invoke or spiritual bypass yourself into. It really is about how you feel about all of these aspects of your relationships. So I'm happy to go a little bit more into that if you'd like.
Yes, please.
So within the individual factors, the first thing is to actually really want to be non-monogamous. There's so many people who enter non-monogamy under duress, feeling maybe that they have to do it in order to be with the person they want to be with, or, feeling somewhat coerced. So if you don't fully subscribe to the system of non-monogamous values, it's going to be hard. So the first factor is to really have your value system on board with the non-monogamous situation. The second factor in the individual category is security within self. And that means feeling like you have a high enough degree of autonomy that mitigates the sense of threat that could come from sharing your partner, so to speak. Because, of course, if you're really dependent on that person financially or emotionally or otherwise, the idea of them sharing resources and time with someone else will naturally feel quite threatening. So having that source of security within self and having that strong sense of self-reliance and also having your own needs met, having your own friends, having had a great meal that day, having had a good night of sleep, feeling overall good in your life can allow you to feel more generous and more secure. And that is a great foundation for compersion. So moving on to the relational factors, the first one is relational security. And that is how secure and abundant do you feel in your relationship. So giving you an analogy of like, if I'm really hungry and I just get a small portion of food and someone takes something from my plate and gives it to someone else, that's
pissed.
not gonna feel good. Yeah, I'm gonna be pissed. I'm gonna be like, hey, what are you doing? But if I have a big plate of food and I'm quite satiated already, then of course I wanna share. And it doesn't feel as threatening to share. So that sense of having a full relational cup, also very foundational to compersion. The second factor in that category is how you feel about your metamors. And your metamors are your partner's other partners. So if my partner is dating someone that I think is really cool and I think really respects me and my existing relationship and brings something to the table, maybe they actually are a really great influence on my partner. My partner is becoming a better partner to me because they're with this other person. It's going to be a lot easier to experience compersion than if they're dating someone that I find really threatening. Maybe I have the sense that they just want to steal away my partner and be monogamous with them. That would be a very obvious block to compersion. And then the third relational factor is feeling gratitude for the benefits brought about by this other relationship. So, for example, I had research participants who told me like, hey, we have very different needs and, activity preferences in our relationship. Like one person really likes camping, the other person really likes dancing, and they have a really great amount of compatibility in their everyday life, but having other partners who like to do what they like to do relieves them from the pressure to satisfy all of each other's needs.
I thought you were going to go into like some crazy kink or something, but we went to camping instead. It's okay.
I can do kink too.
To some people, camping is a kink.
So basically, though, like something that you can't meet their need, there could be like a sense of relief and happiness from that, whether it's camping or kink.
I have another participant who told me that she feels that her primary partner cannot be her kink partner. And so she really feels like in order to get all of her needs met, she does need at least two partners, because in a kink relationship, there's this power differential. And in a primary nesting partnership, like the person that she wants to have kids with, she wants it to be egalitarian in nature. So they can't be the same person.
Interesting.
But that's only in their relationship, right? It's like whatever your rules are in your own relationship.
For sure. Yeah, for her, like her preference is, for her nesting partnership to be egalitarian. And not everyone would say that.
I mean, I can definitely see how this plays into poly relationship or consensual non-monogamy. Clearly, there's other sides of jealousy that we'll get into, but I'm curious before we go down that path. Like, is this something that applies to monogamous relationships as well? Like, can compersion exist there?
Oh, totally. I would say that oftentimes people get jealous of their partner's hobbies and other friends and even activities. And this idea of compersion, of not feeling like you have to have this trademark or this monopoly on your partner's happiness, can really bring a lot of breathing room into monogamous relationships and kind of go away from codependency and feeling like you have to fulfill all of each other's needs.
Yeah.
Like, for example, let me know if I'm on base with this one. Like, you hate camping. We'll stick with camping. And your partner wants to go away camping with their friends or a solo trip. And instead of feeling like, oh, they're neglecting me, they're, choosing camping over spending time with me in a world of compersion, you'd be like, go them. Have a great time camping. I'm happy for you.
Exactly.
But
Great example.
I am having a hard time taking is then just get some friends. Diversify your friends who satisfy all these different interests. Why go that step of finding romantic partners?
Well, I mean, again, like to use the kink example, sometimes you can't just have a friend. Like the need that you're trying to fulfill is erotic or sexual in nature. But also, why not find another romantic partner? Depends how you view monogamy as a value or non-monogamy as a value. So depends from your perspective.
I think the way I'm understanding it, let me know if I'm right, Marie. It's not that it's non-monogamy, monogamy. It's more of this overarching theme of compersion, of just being happy and joyful for the other person. In a non-monogamous situation, it can show up more sexually as well. Where in a monogamous, you would uphold that boundary of not sleeping with other people, but there's other ways that are non-sexual that you can experience compersion. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say so. Absolutely.
So the difference between compersion in a non-monogamous sense and just open relationships and polyamory is compersion is that extra feeling of like wanting your partner to pursue these other relationships, to have a more fulfilled life, and to almost encourage them. And I can see how sometimes if there's no compersion in a polyamorous relationship, you're just letting your partner go explore. It's a different way of looking at those other relationships.
Mm-hmm. Well, I actually, in my book, I described there's different varieties of compersion. And I also conceptualize compersion on a spectrum.
Okay.
So the two different kinds of compersion are attitudinal compersion versus embodied compersion. And that is really important to talk about because usually when people use the word compersion, they mean embodied compersion. They mean like really feeling emotionally thrilled for their partners, other relationships. And that's what we hear about more, is like, oh my God, I really want you to date somebody else because that makes me so happy. And for some people, it even turns them on sexually. And there's this embodied, almost intoxicating joy. And, I can feel that also for my friends who just got married and just being in their wedding was so exciting. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't handle it. It's so cute. But then there's also attitudinal compersion, which is more of that cognitive variety. And that is when you're interpreting your partner's other relationships as a positive event, but you're not necessarily emotionally thrilled about it or super engaged with it. So oftentimes, people in the polyamory community might feel like they're defective or deficient if they don't feel this embodied or emotional compersion. But I always, argue that, well, if you're in support of your partner's other relationship, that is compersion as well. It's more just of a cognitive variety and it's just less intense.
I feel like I'm bringing this back to heteronormative because that's where I sit on this. But I can see an example, like my partner and I've kind of like had this thing that like on Sundays we'll do our own thing. And, it makes me really joyful that he's, getting alone time, recharging, doing all that. But then there was like one day that I didn't really have like other plans and I was like doing chores and I was like getting a little resentful almost. So I feel like that's, correct me if I'm wrong, that's more like what you were saying of like the in thought process, yes, I'm happy for him, but maybe emotionally and like in my body, I'm not like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
But also in that example, Julie, I think back to Marie was saying there's some principles you have to be really strong on before you really feel that compersion. And one of this like taking care of yourself. And in that situation, maybe you weren't catering to yourself or taking care of yourself. So you felt that resentment.
Totally. Because if I was off like with friends or doing a fun activity on my own, I would be fine.
Yeah.
What about situations I'm just thinking about like when, okay, again, this is more monogamous, but let's say you have an ex and you broke up and they've moved on and you're like, I want to feel happy for them that they've moved on. In some cases, people truly do feel that way, but then in other cases, it's hard to because maybe you're still single too. And you're like, in my head, I want to feel good about this, but in my heart, I'm still not there yet. Like, how would you kind of like guide someone of like wanting to feel the compersion, but maybe just not honestly feeling it.
Yeah, that happens a lot in a lot of different situations. Actually, me and my friend Jolie Hamilton, who's a jealousy researcher, we coined a word together to talk about those situations where you want to feel compersion, but you're really in your feels and in your jealousy. We called this a comper struggle.
I like that.
So how I would guide someone through that is to first really validate your emotions. You know, like it's totally natural and totally human to feel jealous and to feel grief or to feel angry or to feel a lot of challenging emotions when you feel that some precious other was somehow taken away from you, or especially if you're not the one who broke it off with this person. Like if you feel like you would still rather be in the relationship with that person, it's completely natural to feel jealousy or anger. So first being with those feelings and identifying what is the intelligence behind those feelings, because they're here to tell us something. I always like the analogy of if you were a CEO of your different parts, to use a internal family system analogy, or if you're, like a CEO of your emotions, jealousy is like this risk management advisor coming to tell you, oh, you should really be careful because this relationship is threatened. Because, like maybe your boyfriend is looking at somebody else or your ex is dating someone else. And if you get that information, then you can evaluate it more rationally and see like, do I need to do anything about this? What is the more kind of reasonable adult way to look at this emotion and treat that emotion? Does it need a hug? Does it need for us to go get sushi and a glass of wine to make us ourselves feel better, to fill our own cup? Do I need to have a conversation with that person and expose my vulnerability? What can I do that is in alignment with my values in that situation? And then if I really want to experience more compersion, I can put myself in their shoes. Like, okay, they're experiencing something good. So how do I actually look at it from their perspective and trust their path? Like, what would it look like if I actually were on the same team with them and were actually a friend? Because I think compersion has a lot to do with friendship and treating people like they're friends and wanting the best for them. So it's not always like like an overnight, oh yeah, I'm just going to feel blissful for them now, but to at least cultivate that attitudinal orientation to relationships rather than to sort of commiserate in this entitlement to our jealousy and to feeling like we are entitled to control people ultimately, because we're all raised in that culture where I think jealousy is glamorized.
Yeah. And even jealousy aside, I also think there's this idea of, oh, I'm not unable to satisfy my partner's needs. It's not, I'm jealous of these other people as my shortcomings. Right. What am I doing wrong? And another kind of heteronormative example for you is in a previous relationship, I remember my partner and I were fighting and we couldn't find a resolution. And he decided to go on a boys' trip to blow off steam. And in theory, I thought this was a great idea. He needed to be around a support system, be around his friends. But deep down, I was not happy because I felt like, well, one, my needs aren't met. This is unresolved, and I can't be happy for you when I feel completely kind of left on my own island here in this relationship. Yeah. So in that situation, how would you guide a couple through that?
That's such a great question. Yeah, oftentimes these situations bring up our sense of inadequacy. Yeah. So I would look at it from the perspective of, oh my God, like it does take a village. It's not our job to fulfill all of our partner's needs. And when we just get on board with that idea that we're not insufficient or inadequate because we can't do everything for that one person, it becomes easier to release that expectation. And another thing is to really be able to provide validation and reassurance about what we do provide. Oftentimes, just hearing what we are and what we represent for our partner can go a long way towards kind of dismantling that sense of inadequacy, to ask like, okay, what makes us really special and strong? And to revalidate that, whether it's in a monogamous partnership or a non-monogamous partnership where, exclusivity is no longer the pillar of security. Yeah. We have to really be I think, articulate about, well, what makes us really special? What makes us safe? What makes us solid if it's not exclusivity?
I feel like we've talked to a lot of people in the poly community. And, I think in theory, you don't want to be jealous. And that's like the whole thing. It's open communication. We're not going to go there. But again, human nature, that can happen. Jealousy can seep in. Do you think compersion and jealousy are like opposites and opposite sides of the spectrum, or can they like coexist at the same time?
I have a whole chapter on this in my book. And it is about the coexistence of jealousy and compersion because, yes, they can coexist and they often do. Again, like from a perspective of us containing multitudes and multitudes of parts, there's usually going to be a part of us that is in a compersion zone, that at least wants to be compersive, that wants to say, like, of course, I interpret this other relationship that my partner is having as a positive thing. There's no agreements that have been breached. This is aligned with my values and principles. But goddamn, this is hard. I'm feeling like devastated at some level.
Yeah.
So yeah. These things can happen concurrently, and they are really challenging because that can be super confusing. And yet, I think it's a great nexus of transformation when we are grappling with different dynamic emotions that are in tension within us. And then what do we do with that? Is really, I think, determinant of who we are, is how do we choose to treat people kind of in spite of what is happening within us? Can we communicate vulnerably rather than with blame? And can we find a way to get our needs met? And can we still be in support of our partners and ourselves?
Yeah. Again, I think this all makes sense in theory. It's just so hard to put it into practice. And let's say for all of our single audience who really want to dive into this idea, how can they start practicing compersion?
Well, to give more like a universal, like idea, because I don't know who is monogamous and who is not, of course, I would start with where in your life are you already experiencing jealousy or envy? For me as an entrepreneur, I often experience envy in the social media realm, or, I'll look at someone who has a lot of professional success and is on the media and has a lot of that kind of success, and I'll start feeling like they're my enemy just because they're more successful than me, in some way. And that is such a good way for me to practice like compersion and like, oh, why am I seeing myself as in opposition to this person now? Because they have something that I want. Can I use that as inspiration to go get more of what I want instead?
Right.
I like that reframe. Yeah.
Same thing with family relationships. I think sibling relationships or parent-child relationships can be ripe for those kinds of competitive dynamics, and finding our way through that and transforming some of the competition dynamics into collaborative dynamics can be so powerful, so transformative.
Yeah, I think it's like, it comes back to where you are in life. Because I think like, I remember feeling this, like when all my friends were getting married and I had just gone through a massive breakup. It's like, I want to be super excited about your weddings, but like there was a ping of jealousy. And I think denying that, would be not truthful. And I saw that you wrote something that, let me know if I'm getting this right. It's like, you don't have to feel compersion to have compersion.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for the people like me that kind of like felt guilty, like, oh my God, why am I not as happy as I should be? How do you like balance that? And how do you be like, okay, I still like have compersion even if I'm not feeling it every minute?
It kind of comes back to that distinction between attitudinal compersion and embodied compersion. Yeah. It's so helpful because, like the pitfall with compersion and even talking about it can be that we slip into that toxic positivity mindset where we're only supposed to feel the beautiful, glorious, generous emotions, and we're not supposed to feel the harder ones that are also so human. But again, what I think matters more than what we feel is how we show up. And I imagine, even though you did feel that pinch of jealousy, it's like, oh, how do you show up for yourself and how do you show up to your friends? I'm sure you showed up, like with joy and just support to your friends. And you know, the fact that you're talking about it makes me feel like you also showed up for yourself, like honoring your feelings.
And I think so much of it's like where I was in my life too,
Yeah.
because like now that I'm in a secure relationship, I don't feel that way. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier about, you know, even in a monogamous setting, like how you were saying like, oh, the security of your relationship is a big piece of it.
Totally.
And making sure your cup is full.
Right. Security of your relationship, but also you're one with yourself.
Yeah, you're the main one, your relationship with yourself.
Exactly. Yeah, and to trust in your own uniqueness. Because comparison is such a trap, you know, like oftentimes when we compare our path with other people, you know, it's like, oh, we slip into like, oh, the grass is greener. And to actually reclaim your own path, your own life, your own self, and just the uniqueness of that can be an interesting piece, you know, to kind of mitigate the natural tendency to compare.
What is the root of this word? Is it a combination of two words?
No, actually, Compersion was coined in a community called Carista. They were a polyamorous community in the 70s in San Francisco. And apparently, and I did verify that with two people that I found who were in the community back then.
Oh.
They had an alphabet board, which is kind of like a Ouija board.
Uh-huh.
And they asked the spirits to...
Oh my God, no.
Yes, to come up with a word because they were experiencing
Wow.
this emotion for their partners, other partners, and they didn't have a word for it. So they just decided to create a new word with their alphabet board.
Wow. It's a great word.
It really is.
Good job, Ouija board.
Really is. I mean, I think like I'm still, I guess, in it too. It's like, how do you start to like work through it? Like, I know there's the, in theory, like, oh, maybe it's something unfulfilled in me. Like, what are some kind of like steps or self-talk that can happen if you're feeling this like ting of jealousy, but wanting to feel compersion?
First is to not necessarily put too much pressure on yourself to feel compersion. Counterintuitively. It's a little bit like, you know, if you're sad and you want to feel happy, you know, like start with being with the sadness. Don't start with thinking like, oh, I should be feeling happy and now I'm ashamed that I'm not feeling happy on top of feeling sad. So just really be with what is. And there's a lot of different tools that I talk about in my book about how compersion can be learned.
Okay.
Some of them are specific to the poly community, such as actually being in a polyamorous community where you can see that behavior modeled. I've had research participants who told me that they could never imagine feeling compersion. They could never really feel it until they saw other people, you know, being with their partners while their partners was making out with someone else and everyone was fine. So they were like, oh, okay, well, I see that it can be fine over here. So maybe I'll let it be fine for me. So
Interesting.
sometimes just tuning into other people who are having an experience that you want to have, just kind of with our mirror neurons, you know, empathically, we get to potentially feel more of it. It's like if you were actually like at the wedding and you're watching your friend getting married and, you know, you might have a pinch of jealousy, but everyone is in that bubble of love and you're in the moment, maybe you're going to, you know, feel more of it. So another thing would be to look at where there might be bottlenecks. I actually designed a worksheet for download on my website that is a self-assessment tool about where in your relationship ecosystem things might be, you know, a little bit less strong, like whether it's in the individual category, in the relationship category, or in the social category, where you could invest more energy to create a fertile terrain for compersion. So it's more about creating a fertile terrain for it and letting it arise rather than trying to invoke it out of thin air. And then another thing I will add, though, is that some people do use loving kindness or mudita meditation because mudita is the equivalent of compersion in Buddhism. It's a Sanskrit word that in Buddhism they use to talk about sympathetic joy, which is one of the 4 qualities of the enlightened person, along with equanimity, loving kindness, and compassion. So there are certain meditations where people actually learn to kind of embody a sense of sharing someone else's joy and getting away from a zero-sum perception of reality. So that can be helpful as well.
I want to dive into this even more, but before we do, let's take a quick break to hear from our partners. November is one of my favorite months, with Thanksgiving around the corner, pumpkin spice lattes, and slipping into a cozy sweater from Quince. I already got my Mongolian cashmere sweater that's only $50, which I still can't get over how much of an absolute steal this is, because they partner directly with top factories and cut out the cost of the middleman, which passes the savings on to us. And it's not just the sweaters. It's all of Quince's items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. As we speak, my ultra stretch straight leg pants are being shipped, and I cannot wait to pair them with my sweater, because that sweater is so damn cozy, and if it was socially acceptable, I'd wear it every day. Get cozy in Quince's high quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/dateable for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/dateable to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/dateable.
Yes, we all know the quality of makeup and skincare products are important, but have you ever thought about how you apply them is even more important for results? Since 2019, Anissa Beauty has been leading the way in creating vegan and cruelty-free makeup and skincare brushes that are safe for your skin and the planet and are designed to optimize the application and absorption of skincare products. Their popular Pinnacle foundation brush has made such a big difference for me. I used to hate wearing foundation because it always felt so caked on, but with this brush, I can use so little product and it goes on flawlessly due to its patented triangular shape. Anissa Beauty's brushes deliver value and quality like no other. The same goes for their Pinnacle Skin Brush, which has completely changed how I apply skincare. I no longer use my hands to apply my products. Check out the Pinnacle Foundation Brush as well as several other amazing brushes at anissabeauty.com and get 30% off site-wide with the code DATEABLE. That's ANISA beauty.com. And don't forget to use the code DATEABLE.
Do you like to be in the know of what's really happening with celebrity gossip? Do you like to hear about the drama happening on reality shows before the shows even air? If you're not listening to Cocktails and Gossip yet, the time is now. I'm obsessed with this podcast because each week, Bea and Amanda, the hosts of the podcast, bring you the tea on reality TV and the craziest celebrity blinds from their website, Bravos and Cocktails. You know, I've been on a real Bravo binge lately, so this podcast is the perfect complement. And trust us, they do not hold back. Listen and you'll have some unfiltered tea to spill at your next dinner party or in your group chat. Pop culture lovers, Bravo lovers, and people who just can't get enough gossip. This is a podcast you should definitely check out. And who knows, you might hear something from Cocktails and Gossip first before you hear it anywhere else. Scandival, anyone? Listen to the weekly Cocktails and Gossip podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Are there any real risks or side effects to compersion?
Dude, it's so funny. I've never been asked that question. Side effects. Does it come with a fine print?
Yeah.
You know, take compersion at your own risk.
You will feel happier and more fulfilled in life.
Yeah. What do people need to watch out for? Could it be that one crazy example is, could it be that you feel so much happiness for other people that you no longer feel the need to work on your own relationships? You're just like, I'm just reveling in other people's happiness.
You know, I've never met someone with that particular problem.
You're like, this did not come up in my research.
I never had a coaching client coming, you know, with like, I have too much compersion and that's a problem.
Too much compersion, yeah.
Help me, Dr. Marie. But again, I want to warn people against the pitfalls of weaponizing compersion. That's what I see more of. That's what I would say is the fine print. Is people oftentimes, and that I actually learned in my coaching practice more so than in my research, is people coming to me and asking me as a coach to fix their partners because their partners are not feeling enough compersion for them.
Can you give an example? I'm curious, like, what that would look like.
Yeah, like I had a couple one time and it was pretty obvious to me that there was an imbalance in their power dynamic. Where, again, it was a hetero couple and the man really wanted to, you know, like go to the strip club every night. And, you know, the woman was not a fan of that, but didn't really have the language and the assertiveness to either get out of the relationship because that was a strong boundary or really negotiate. And so she felt like she had to be going along with the program because, you know, he told her that she needed to feel more compersion. And she was just not happy. And there had been a lot of deception in their relationship already that started to bubble up as we started talking more deeply. And it just was not a really good situation where one of the people was not fully on board. So the thing with compersion is that you have to be in a space of self-consent. You have to be on board. You can't do this reluctantly. Like, to be happy for someone else, like, you have to be on board psychologically, first of all, you know, like, before you can be on board emotionally.
Right. Like, if you're in a monogamous relationship and your partner's like, yeah, I'm cheating on you because it makes me happy, that doesn't like justify compersion, right?
Yeah, there's downright abusive dynamics where people are using compersion or that concept as a weapon and saying, like,
you should be
you're
happy.
A bad partner. Yeah. Yes. So I actually wrote a blog called Use Compersion as a flashlight, not a stick. Not a stick to beat yourself with or beat other people with.
Yeah.
You can't coerce yourself or coerce other people into compersion.
That is very interesting. See, that's a real risk of compersion when it's unbalanced.
Yeah.
I can also see some relationships open up because one partner has requested it. So maybe they say something like, it would make me happy to see you with other people who make you happy too. But the other partner would also have to feel the same way. Because they can't just say, yeah, I'm going to go and find other people who make me happy, but I cannot picture you with someone else, right? That imbalance can't be there.
Right. It has to be a two-way street.
So I'm thinking of an example in my life where I had a partner, an ex of mine, for a long time. And, you know, ultimately he just couldn't be the person that I needed. And he was very much like, I want you to find someone else that can meet your needs. Like, I want the best for you. And at the time I was kind of like, that's a load of shit. Like, that's like, you know, kind of a cop out. Like, what the heck? But now the more years that have passed and like now that I'm in a different relationship, like, I actually can see where that was coming from. And in a way it feels like compersion. Would you agree? Or how do you feel about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it seems like he wanted to stay with you, but for you to have other partners?
No. He wanted, basically, we weren't going to be together and to move on.
And he was telling you like, hey, I really want the best for you. I hope you find someone who fits you better.
Yeah, and I think he like believed that. But at the time I was very like struggling with this because I'm like, I don't think I would be so like kept on like someone doing this, you know?
No, I mean, I think that we all react differently to breakups. And I think that is totally wonderful when we can get to that place where we want the best for our ex. And sometimes it doesn't happen right away, and that's totally natural too. But, you know, the sooner it can happen, the better.
So is that coming, though, from a pure place of like, you know, I want the best for them? Or is there like a relief of guilt or like something else that's at the root of that?
Yeah, you know, I think, so there's two sides to compersion. If we get a little bit more deep into my research, like there's the more like empathic side of compersion, but then there's also the gratitude for the benefits received.
Yeah.
And that can be labeled as more utilitarian, more of something like, oh, well, it benefits me, so I feel happy for you. Or I feel happy for this situation.
I see. Okay.
Like if you don't want to do a kink and your partner finds it elsewhere, you could be
I don't have
now
to feel
I'm happy
guilty
I don't
that I'm
actually
not
have to
providing
do
that for you. I don't have to feel like sad for you that you're not getting that. It just benefits everyone, including me, that you're finding someone to get that need met that I don't want to meet.
So one feels more selfish and one feels more selfless. Is that true? Or are they both actually benefits, even if one does benefit you more?
You know, they're usually hand in hand.
Okay.
Because it's harder to feel compersion when you don't benefit at all, when there's not a perception of benefits. Or, you know, like the other end of the spectrum would be if you feel like it's a detriment to you or to your relationship, then it's hard to feel on board. But for some people, like just feeling that empathic joy is a benefit. It just makes them happy. But in evolutionary psychology, like scientists have realized that there's no real pure altruism.
Most people are selfish. Yeah.
There's always a sense of we also want to be included in whatever benefits are happening. And it doesn't mean that we're bad people, like a terrible species. It just means that we're wired in a way where our individual motives are tied with, social motives. And like in my study, I found that compersion is kind of a mix of empathic joy and gratitude. And they usually come hand in hand. And I can tell you a little story actually about, I interviewed people who were in their older age ranges, and they were saying that because they were older, it was easier for them to experience compersion because there was more to gain from being polyamorous. And specifically, they just needed more care. As people got sick and old, to have more people in the community that actually cared for them at that kind of family level, rather than being caught in those nuclear family systems where you're just like the two of you trying to care for each other 24/7. They started to see more benefits from being poly, and that definitely stoked the fire of their compersion.
Where is the line between compersive thinking and laziness, or just basically like stubbornness? I don't want to fulfill that need for my partner. I'll have them find it somewhere else.
Well, there is a philosophy, I think, in mononormativity that we should at least try to fulfill all of our partner's needs. And if we don't even try, we're kind of like not really in, or we're not really a good partner. But I think, that's a bit arbitrary. If you are in a monogamous relationship, you can do your best to fulfill as many as, of their needs as you can, but why not spread the needs around? Is that so bad? What would be really the downside of that?
Right, though.
That's so counter everything we've been taught about relationships.
It really is.
If it works, then who's losing?
True.
No, it's so fascinating because I do think it is everything counter we've been told.
Yeah, it's fascinating when you start looking at these scripts, that we've been told, not just told in words, but told through Hollywood movies and Disney and billboards and magazines. When you start looking at mononormativity, you start seeing it everywhere. Why do you get invited to your company party and it's a +1? It's never a +2. Or, you're my other half, these romantic phrases where it just implies there can only be two of us. Everything, like jewelry that's made for two, restaurants, reservations for Valentine's Day, it's only tables for two. There's all these kind of subtle messages in our society that we grew up with as you have to fulfill all of this partner's needs.
I feel like that it's just, there's so much resentment that builds on that.
Yeah.
If that's the expectation, and even if you're non-monogamous, I still really believe you can't get all your needs met for one person. And if you expect that, they're set up to fail.
Yeah, totally. We do stigmatize not only non-monogamous relationships, but also singlehood. We do put that kind of coupledom relationship on a pedestal, and everything that doesn't fit into that, we think less of. And I think that's a big mistake.
We also stigmatize relationships that aren't the two people doing everything together.
Yeah.
If people live in different residences, in long distance, that's stigmatized also. It's not a real couple.
Right. I'm a big fan of just intentional relationships, whether it's monogamous or not, or which shade of monogamy or non-monogamy you land on with the people you're with. I think to really not take those questions for granted and to not slip into a template that's been given to you is one of the main ways to be satisfied with your relationships, is to make those choices intentionally.
And what I'm gathering too, it's if you're going to have other relationships, whether they're sexual or not, if it's jealousy based, that's set up for failure. So it needs to have a level of compersion, which is what is bringing this full circle.
Yeah, at least attitudinal. Yes, compersion.
Attitudinal. Yeah.
I think the embodied kind, I would say, is kind of a bonus, but attitudinal compersion feels more fundamental.
What do you think is one tip that you could leave our listeners of how to embody more of the attitudinal compersion? Like, what's like one thing they can start doing today, no matter their relationship status, no matter if they're monogamous, non-monogamous, it doesn't matter. What's like one thing you can leave with?
You know what can really help kind of build that muscle is to celebrate other people's successes more fully and more verbally.
Yeah.
Like if you have, I don't know, a friend who is in a wonderful relationship and you want to celebrate that, send them a text, either a group text with, two of them if it's the two of them or more of them if they're not monogamous. Send them a text just telling them how wonderful you feel like it is that they're in this beautiful partnership and how happy you feel for them. Or if it's your friends who, like are more successful professionally or financially or something like that, find it in your heart to actually full-heartedly celebrate them and tell them that. Like, these are the moments that build such strong bonds between people. Yeah. Like, who doesn't like to feel celebrated?
I think in return, that also like gives you the ammunition just because they're going to be happy, right? That you acknowledge that. And then that's going to, make it be something that you want to keep doing.
Yeah,
exactly.
And we should probably focus on compersion for ourselves, too. Because Julie and I are having a hard time. We've always had a hard time celebrating our achievements because we feel like there's so much more to do. But we see it embodied in our friends. And I think that's like the inspiration to also feel compersive towards ourselves.
Yes. I actually had this conversation with a friend the other day. We were like, there is such thing as self-compersion. Wow. Mind-blowing. Absolutely.
I think one thing I'm learning too in relational skills, it's like celebrating the people in your life, but also recognizing like things that may not be important to you per se, but are to them. So like if you have like a friend that's like super into tennis, for instance, like, and that's something you never do, but being able to be like, oh, actually this is important to them, so I will celebrate this instead of just being like, oh, not a big deal because it's not a big deal to me.
Are you talking about me? Are you are you indirectly talking? Am I the friend? No,
Not who I was thinking of, but yes.
No, I get that. I get that. And we also have daters saying, I have to date someone who has the same interests as me and who get excited about the same things. And you've just freed them from looking for that needle in a haystack because you don't need you don't need that person who's aligned with you on everything that you want to do and everything that makes you happy. You need the baseline of a foundation of a relationship of someone who supports you and who is cheering you on, but they don't need to fulfill all of those needs.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, I want to celebrate you two for your book that you just came out with. It's so wonderful. Congrats.
Thank you.
I'm so happy for you.
We will take that celebration.
Yes, we accept.
How wonderful. It's going to help a lot of people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, thank you for this whole conversation. I think there's just been so many eye-opening moments of it. I think for me, what I'm really taking away from this is that there's a spectrum of compersion, that you should not beat yourself up if you don't feel like that overwhelming, physical sense of joy, but you can at least rationalize it. I think that's okay. And I think what it is a moment to look inward, because I definitely can see that anytime I have felt that jealousy, it's something unfulfilled within me. And that's actually so much more worth putting your energy towards than to the person that has what you want, right? So like being able to separate the two too, I think will help celebrate other people and give that compersion. And, I'm thinking about too in relationships, like it's so important to celebrate and to accept people for all that they're doing. Like even if it means less time with you or it means, taking away from your relationship in some way, but it's reframing that it's not taking away, but it's actually adding because it's giving them joy and they can come back and feel better overall.
Such a beautiful summary.
Yeah, I definitely feel like sometimes I think joy, happiness, success is a zero-sum game. Someone else has experienced that joy. They've taken that away from me. So why should I celebrate them taking that away from me? But with this idea of compersion, it's infinite. It is abundant. And the more we can step into someone's joy, the more we get to feel that for ourselves. But if we don't, then we're actually taking that joy away from ourselves. That's what you're detracting from your life, right? So that's a great mindset shift is to know that the more you celebrate others, the more you will feel celebrated, the more you will feel joy, the more abundance of that you will feel too. And also to give yourself grace for not feeling that right away, but also opening that door of what if? Like, what if in this moment, yes, I'm feeling a little jealousy. What if I feel an ounce of joy and celebration? What would that feel like? And maybe that's just a slow way of opening that door to eventually embodying compersion, which is what I hope to eventually get to.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Can I end with a small anecdote to piggyback on what you just said? When you said, that you might deprive yourself from a lot of joy, if you don't tap into compersion. I was at my neighborhood bar the other day, just having a beer by myself, chilling, and the person next to me, literally out of nowhere, turns to me and starts telling me that if you can't share the joy of others, you make your world really small.
Whoa.
I was like,
you're like, do you know what I do for a living?
Yeah. Do you know who I am? Where did you come from? And I just was tripping out. I was like, wow. Yeah, I agree.
And then did they walk away? How do you just mic drop that?
Just mic drop, literally. Yeah, I know. I showed them my book. I was like, I wrote a book about this, buddy.
I mean, I think that's so true, though. Like, I was thinking, Yue, when you were giving, like, your takeaway, it's like, I'm thinking about the times when I wasn't feeling compersion and just, like, how I was showing up.
Yeah.
And it was so closed off versus, like, the times, even when I was, like, dead single, but I was happy for people. It was just such a different, like, way of just being that is just so much more attractive, that is going to invite someone in, opposed to, like, feeling down in the dumps because you don't have what, you think you should have or whatever.
Yeah, the only person you're letting down is yourself.
Really?
You're the only one experiencing the negative effects. So why do you want to put yourself through that? That's a big one. That's such a great takeaway. And Marie, my other takeaway is I'm going to do these wisdom drops at bars just to random strangers and then walk away and then give them our book.
Yeah, it's the best way. But for anyone, because I think your book is super fascinating, for anyone, how do they get in touch with you? How do they find out more about the book? All that stuff.
Well, it's all on my website, mariethouin.com. I also have a specific website for compersion if people want to get a little deeper into my research. It's whatiscompersion.com.
Okay. People will remember that.
Yeah, exactly. It's easy to remember. And if folks are interested in coaching at all, I do a free 30-minute introductory session. So you can go ahead and book one right now, and we can talk about compersion, mindful dating, and mindful relationships, whether or not you're monogamous or polyamorous or anywhere in between.
Great. And we'll link everything in the show notes as well.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's very generous. I might just book one.
All of a sudden,
just had an hour with you, but
Marie's like, I just got a new client. It's Yue.
I just want to keep talking about this. Well, for all of our listeners, while you're booking the session with Marie, you're probably online. Might as well head over to our podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever you get your podcast and give us a rating and review, 5 stars in the body of the review. Here's a question for you to answer. What does compersion mean to you?
I like that.
What did you learn from this episode? Or what is something surprising that you learned about compersion in this episode? Marie, once we get those comments in, we'll share them with you. I'm sure we'll get some really interesting ones.
Be joyful for us by leaving a review.
And then we'll in turn feel joyful for you, obviously, for leaving a review. Okay, and other ways to get in touch with us. hello@dateablepodcast.com is our email. You can find us on all of the social medias. @dateablepodcast is our handle. Okay, we're going to wrap up this episode. Stay dateable!